Welcome back to Unveiling the Covenants, where we explore the mysteries of sacred scripture and the covenant love of our Father from the pages of the Bible, from the heart of the church. Now, we've been talking about salvation history. We're going through the story of God's love unveiled through us, to us, by utilizing these covenant mediators. We just finished the story of Isaac, and he is going to pass away soon. Jacob has stolen the blessing he's been blessed, and Rebekah, Jacob's mother, has told him, run away, lest your brother Esau, whom Jacob stole the blessing from, kills him. Now, Esau is already embittered, but like I've mentioned in past episodes, Esau is unwilling to be truly faithful to the responsibilities of a covenant mediator. And even after this whole fiasco, rather than turn to the Lord in humility and say, Lord, forgive me for my failures, bless me, bless the works of my hand, I choose to be faithful to you. Rather than doing that, this is what Esau, whose name is now also Edom, meaning red, this is what Esau does. This is in chapter 28, verse 6. Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take a wife from there. And that as he blessed him, he charged him, you shall not marry one of the Canaanite women, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and gone to Padan Aram. Esau saw that Canaanite women did not please Isaac his father. And so what does he do? He went to Ishmael and took to wife, besides the two wives he already had. Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, and the sister of Nebaioth. So now he's got three wives, two Hamites, who are Canaanites. These are people descended of Ham and Canaan, disobeyers of the covenant. These are people who have betrayed the covenant. These are people who are unfaithful to Israel. They hate the God of the covenant. They hate the people who are children of the covenant. Now, to top it all off, Esau already has two wives with this generation. He goes and takes the third. And this third wife is an Ishmaelite, yet another person who hates the covenant. As I've mentioned before, we know from oral tradition and from some level of genealogical history that Ishmael becomes the forefather of the Arab Muslims. His descendant Muhammad would one day start up this religion as an antithesis to the Judeo and Christian revelation. Islam, by itself and in a grander scale, the Ishmaelites hate the covenant. They hate the fact that it went to Isaac. They hate the fact that Isaac is the son of the covenant. And so Esau knows this. And so what does he do? He rubs salt into an open wound. He basically, his mentality is, well, I've dishonored my parents. I've broken the covenant. Do I care? No, I want to double down. And so he marries an Ishmaelite woman. It's not just bigamy at this point. This is trigamy. He has three wives, as if, and I say this with all respect and love, as if being married to one person isn't a headache enough. Now, I'm not saying that, now I want to be clear here, I'm not saying that therefore women are headaches or wives are headaches. That's not what I'm saying. Rather, what I'm saying is because of the fall, the harmony that God intended in marriage, that's why I said having one spouse. The harmony that God intended in marriage is lost. We no longer have this preternatural gift of harmony, and therefore, men don't perfectly understand women, women don't perfectly understand men in grace. And that's why marital conflict exists. God even said that your husband shall rule over you, but you shall desire him. It's an imbalance of relationship. That there will be a desire of the spouses for each other, but there will be disharmony and discord in the relationship. God's grace in the sacrament is the way to overcome it. But boy, does it take cooperation with grace and hard work. We need to say yes to the graces of the covenant and work within the graces of the covenant for the sake of making holy, happy, joyous marriages, which by God's grace I'm blessed with, but that doesn't mean it doesn't take hard work. Every day I wake up and invest my life into this covenant. So yes, I have a happy marriage, and yes, I have a happy family, but that doesn't come easy. It comes from prayer and fidelity to God, and then prayer and fidelity for the sake of my marriage, and prayer and fidelity for the sake of my fatherhood. And I pray for my family as a result. Esau doubles down, triples down. And so now he's got headache upon headache upon headache because he doesn't have covenantal fidelity. And he's chosen people who hate the covenant of his parents. That is not a happy family. And as we all know, wherever there exists more than one spouse, believe me when I say this, there will be divisiveness in the family. Because you're unable to make a complete gift of yourself to the other. How? You're making a complete gift of yourself to one woman, but also a complete gift of yourself to another woman, but also a complete gift of yourself to another woman. That's garbage. There's no such thing. Completeness and wholeness connote oneness. And that's why the scriptures talk about the one flesh union, not three flesh union. Yes, three become one in the Trinity. You and I are not Trinity people. You and I are not God. God designed marriage to be one man, one woman, permanent, lifelong, and indissoluble. What is Esau doing here? He's disdaining his parents. He's disdaining God. Willfully. This is a public slap in the face. Behold, the firstborn son of Isaac. Isaac, who was your former covenant mediator, now Jacob has been ordained. The firstborn son of Isaac, and what am I doing? Publicly declaring, I loathe what this covenant stands for. That's what he's declaring. And so Esau's narrative will not go beyond this, and it will be bad. But now we turn our attention to Jacob. Jacob's running, he's fleeing for his life. And so he left Beersheba, the place of the hallowing, and he went towards Haran, where his mother is from, where Abraham, of the Chaldeans, Mesopotamia, that area. And he came to a certain place, stayed there that night because the sun had set. Now, this is chronologically true. The sun was in fact setting, but there's a language at play here. Remember, the Hebrew people, when they wrote these narratives, they used imagery to convey theological reality. The sun setting is language for the laying down in death. And so Jacob is undergoing a kind of death here in the darkness. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed at that point that there was a ladder set up on the earth. Now, that stone is also crucial. There's a kind of imagery at play here. I don't want to overplay that hand. He used it as a pillow, to be sure. But the ladder becomes a symbol that plays onto the stone. And this is what I mean. Jacob, now sleeping here, says, or he dictates eventually, and that's how this narrative gets into the scriptures, that he saw a ladder set up on earth, the top of it reached to the heavens, and behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. The Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your descendants, and your descendants shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east, and to the north and to the south. And by you, your descendants, shall all families of the earth bless themselves. There's a lot to unpack here, and I want to take you through this carefully. Jacob has encountered a kind of death, a darkness. He is, in this case, at his rock bottom, so to speak, as he's lying on the bottom with a rock, quite literally. But take that a step further. That rock that he lays his head becomes a kind of image of a security he's looking for. And so what does God show him? God shows him the source of his security. It is in the covenant promises of God. And so a ladder ascends from the earth, but this ladder is above Jacob. It's on Jacob. And he's trying to make sense of this. Eventually, we will understand that now heaven and earth are still cut off by a great chasm of sin. God was saying, despite your sinfulness, Jacob, I am going to use you. Oh, you deceiving, oh, you cunning, oh, you untrustworthy man, I am going to use you nonetheless to bring heaven down to earth and to bring earth up to heaven. I mean, I need to tell you, if you're not getting goosebumps, this is about the time that we should. Jacob doesn't deserve this. And as he's dreaming this, he is aware he doesn't deserve this. He understands the symbolism. And it is true, if I may jump ahead, eventually, through Jacob, who will become Israel, Israel will turn into a nation. That nation will become God's firstborn kingdom of priests. whose job it will be to mediate the work of the God of heaven in liturgy down to earth, and to draw earth into heavenly contemplation. We will see this made manifest in liturgical worship, in the Ark of the Covenant, wherein God will quite literally, so to speak, dwell on earth. It will become the throne of God on this earth, the Ark of the Covenant. But I want to jump ahead even further. We can do this in a lot of symbols and figures, but I want to jump all the way to the person of Christ. Descended of Jacob, Christ becomes the true gate to heaven. He talks about that. I am the way, the truth, the life. I am the gate. And so Christ and his cross bridges that gap so that what was once impossible has been made possible through this descendant of Jacob who has become God and man. Jacob, in some prophetic capacity, foresees something like this. He doesn't see the full picture, but he foresees something like this. God is saying, despite your sinfulness, you are the one I've chosen to bring forth the Messiah, the Anointed One, the Savior, who is my son, became man, taking on human nature, and he will be your descendant. Rightly so, he will bridge. He will become the real staircase or ladder from earth to heaven and from heaven to earth. He will bridge that gap. I mean, I have to tell you, Jacob's going ballistic at this point, and his response demonstrates this. He's terrified. He knows he doesn't deserve it. Because up till this point, he still calls God the God of Isaac. He tells Isaac, the Lord, your God, did this. He's been faithful to covenant stipulations, but he hasn't entered into the intimacy of binding himself in fidelity to God, even though he's circumcised. He hasn't entered into the circumcision of the heart, where he lays his heart down for the sake of the Lord taking it up. And that, my friends, is what's so crucial about this narrative. That's Jacob's ladder. Christ is Jacob's ladder. But in a penultimate way, Jacob's yes becomes Jacob's ladder. He will become a kind of bridge to heaven and earth because he is a covenant mediator. And so all of us, as we say yes to God, we become smaller Christs, so to speak. And through the sacramental graces, God, the God of the universe, dwells within us. Grace, divine life of heaven, dwells within us. And we become these manifestations of bridges between heaven and earth. And that's why what we have and what the unbaptized don't is so far a chasm that first we have to realize it so that second we can draw them into this life. This is what supernatural life entails. This is the reality that God had prepared us from all eternity to see. And this isn't reserved for the few. Sacramental grace, the liturgical living, the life lived in virtue is supernatural life made manifest. A living, intimate bond with God that is made manifest through every facet of our life. So that our minds are transformed by the reading of His Word and the meditating upon the love of God and gazing upon the crucifix, the finished work of Christ, which is the ladder that bridges heaven and earth. You and I are contained in Jacob's ladder. And if you've never known that until this point, you and I become, in this sense, spiritual issuances, spiritual descendants of Jacob, and therefore participants in Jacob's ladder. Now, I want to take you back to the narrative. The Lord stood above it. I am the Lord your God, the God of Abraham, your father, the God of Isaac, which is also his father. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your descendants. And so there's a divine promise that Jacob will then establish a covenantal claim for. And therefore, let me reiterate this, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob made legal claims on that land that is legally binding, even though the divine law is higher. And so divine law does in fact give that land to the blood descendants of Jacob, the blood descendants of Isaac, the blood descendants of Abraham. At the same time, this is also legally binding because he will establish a covenant claim on the land. But look at this. Your descendants shall be like the dust of the earth. And so the people of Israel, not just in terms of their biological numbers, but in terms of the spiritual people who are grafted onto the tree of Israel, as Paul talks about in the earlier part of Romans. You and I are the spiritual children of Jacob, and therefore we are the descendants who are like the dust of the earth, the Catholic family, the Christian church. You shall spread abroad to the west and to the east. And mind you, as we hear in the Eucharistic liturgy, as from the east to the west, a perfect offering is made to the glory of your name, because that's exactly what happens. There is no unitive liturgical worship that binds the whole world like the Catholic Mass, not even in Protestant denominations, very honestly, because the system of worship, the creeds of belief vary. But in the unifying tradition of the Church, there is no difference between creed and liturgy. The same liturgical sacrifice of the Eucharistic Mass is the sacrifice offered throughout 2,000 years from the east to the west, that this perfect offering may be made to the glory of the Lord's name and as a spiritual participation of the family of Jacob that you and I are a part of. And that is the fulfillment. By you and your descendants shall all the families of the earth bless themselves. Behold, I am with you, and I will keep you wherever you go. I will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done that which I've spoken to you. So Jacob awakes, realizing the magnificence of the covenant promise. And so what happens? He says, surely the Lord is in this place. He's panicking at this point. Read the tone and the language. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. I happily went to sleep on a rock. And that rock now comes into play. The ladder ascends and descends from Jacob, who has his head resting on the rock. Christ is the firm foundation of the entirety of salvation history. As Jacob lays his head upon the rock, the descendants of Jacob lay their head upon Christ, who is the rock, who is the true ladder between heaven and earth. And this Christ will establish his church upon Peter the rock. And this correlation means that the descendants of Christ, the descendants of Jacob, the descendants of Isaac spiritually, all become members standing upon the rock that Jacob rests his head in security. The security that Jacob longed for, he now finds in God's covenantal promise to him now and in the assurance of the future. God is that rock, certitude, and assurance that you and I are looking for. Make no mistake about that. And that's what Jacob is coming to discover. And so he's flabbergasted by it. He's blown away by it. And so look at this. He reacts. He is afraid. The scripture says he is afraid, and that word in Hebrew for fear, it's not just fear in terms of I'm terrified, even though that's true. He's suddenly in awe of the divine presence before him, and gosh, do we need to reclaim that. This virtue of fear of the Lord that you and I need to desperately reclaim, lest we become an irreverent people. And he says this, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Now remember, we will see that word come to manifest and perfection in Christ. And so Jacob rose early in the morning, and he took up the stone which he had put what? Under his head. As I told you, that stone would have covenantal significance. And he set it up for what? The base of a pillar, poured oil on top of it. And he called the name of that place Beth-El, the house of God. And Christ, the new Jacob, who establishes the new Israel, will establish himself as the rock upon Peter, whom he calls the rock. And he will establish Peter as a pillar, because upon Peter the entire church is built. And all the other apostles essentially stand upon Peter's authority. And he anoints Peter as the sign of the new covenant, which will be the church and the Eucharistic sacrifice. What we see beginning in Beth-El, the house of God, we will see fulfilled in the new and eternal, covenantal, Catholic Beth-El, house of God. So when you read this narrative, see the foreshadowing come to tremendous fulfillment in and through the person of Jesus Christ. And so pouring oil to anoint that rock, to signify that this is not just a legal claim, but a sacred claim, that there has been a divine hand at play here. He called the name of the place Beth-El. The name of the city was Luz at first. Jacob made a vow. He swears a covenant oath now. This is the first time we are seeing him willingly undertake his part in swearing covenant oath to God. And this is what he says. It's a conditional oath, to be sure. But let's face it, none of us is so unconditional when it comes to God. We are faithful to God because he is faithful to us first. And so this is what Jacob says. If God will be with me, as God himself said he will, and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear. Now, I want to unpack this, so I'm just going to go through it. So that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and the stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give the 10th to you. So let's unpack that really quickly. God says, I will be with you. Christ will fulfill that in a universal manner in Matthew 28. Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. And the presence of God is made manifest in this abundant way, but foreshadowed even at Bethel, the house of God. But take it a step further. If God will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat. And yes, God does in fact provide for Jacob as he provides for us materially. But remember, all of this is pointing to a kind of final fulfillment, a new and eternal fulfillment. And so what bread do we have now? But the bread that comes down from heaven, the manna that the children of Jacob will eat in the desert, will come to fulfillment in the great heavenly manna that is Jesus Christ's body, blood, soul, and divinity in Eucharistic bread and wine. But over and above that, clothing to wear. Now, this isn't just Jacob saying, don't make me poor, even though that's true, provide for me. The language of clothing and robing has to do with sonship. Slaves and servants had different clothes to wear about their service that were more practical than anything. But children wore clothes that were primarily demonstrative of their standing in the family and only secondarily functional. In fact, they took off those robes when they worked. It was common for people to work in their loincloths or to gird their loins when they worked. So when Jacob is saying, will clothe me, give me clothing to wear, he's not just saying, make sure I'm not poor. He's also saying, treat me like a son. Have me a place in Bethel. Have me a place in your house, O God, as you have done for Isaac my father, for Abraham his father, so that I come again to my father's house in peace. Because it's not enough for Jacob to want to see this in spiritual fulfillment in this place Bethel. He also knows he's been ostracized, and he wants that rift healed. This is Jacob honoring the fact that he caused that division. This is the first time Jacob is taking responsibility. God, I want to go back. My goal is to go back, but I want to go back in peace. I don't want to go back to division. In other words, this is a subtle prayer. Heal my brother's hatred of me. This prayer will come to fulfillment practically. But in a spiritual way, Jacob has prayed this for all of us. The world hates us, but know this. The only enemy we have is Satan. And if that is the case, then we want to return to even our Father's house in peace. We desire the union of everyone in the covenant family of God, and that is crucial. So that the Lord shall be my God. The stone shall be a pillar, it shall be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will always honor you and thank you and give back to you. A 10th, meaning I will honor the fact that nothing I have is mine. Everything I have came from you. And so this language of giving a 10th, the stipulation for tithing, had to do with, God, I will give the best that you give me back to you, because what do I have that you haven't given me? What I want to encourage all of us to do as we hear this narrative, and that's the end of Genesis 28, what I want to encourage all of us as we hear this narrative is immerse ourselves in the heart of Jacob. Dive deeply into the struggle that's going through Jacob's own heart right now. Don't take that for granted. Don't let this pass us by. That Jacob sees as wrong. He sees God's place in his life. He sees what needs to be done. He knows that it's not going to come easy. And so he's giving himself to the work of sanctification, of purification. But he's trusting it all to God. Nothing you and I have did not first come from the Lord. And so the best of what we are goes to God. The best of what we have as a family goes to God. The best of who we are goes to God. It is in that we ought to begin. And if we can build from there, if we can trust from there, if we can run forward from there, we can understand that what God has set in place for us to flourish is what He wants us to steward, so that we can draw others to Him. Let your family belong to God. Let all that you have, your talents, your skills, belong to God. Don't overthink things. Trust that the work that you are doing is the work that God is doing in you first. You and I are part of Jacob's ladder. Let us work hard to bring heaven down to earth and to bring earth up to heaven. If we can honor that, then everything we do in this life will fall into perspective. If we forget that, then we will seek to build kingdoms for ourselves on earth, and we will be the authors of our own demise. I humbly, sincerely encourage you. Give your life, your family, your work to the Lord your God. And may the witness of this, our patriarch, converting, become an inspiration to us to do the same. Let's be faithful to our Lord in covenant, because He is faithful to us. Thank you for joining us. I'm Marcus Peter.